So that's our Muppet of the Month,
Yeah.
which was linked with a form of entertainment, dare I say it, media, and this leads us on to our media picks for the month. This month, do you want to go first, Andy?
No, you go first. I think I went first last time. You go
Okay,
first.
okay. Well, this month I have chosen as my media pick of the month. I'm stretching it beyond TV this time
Oh,
into the realm of actually, there's a video, an online video actually on Facebook, which has been released by Ubisoft, the producers of the Assassin's Creed game franchise.
mhm.
This is called Tales from the Tomb, and it is a wonderful, tongue-in-cheek use of ancient Egyptian artwork to tell a series of hilarious stories. It's very funny. I'll put a link to it below. But actually, linked with this little video, there's also a broader story and topic here that I always wanted to highlight as well, and that is that actually Ubisoft will be releasing next year a version of their new Assassin's Creed game, Assassin's Creed Origins, set in ancient Egypt, specifically for use in classrooms. They're going to be offering classes and students, in that sense, the opportunity to explore portions of the ancient Egyptian world with lots of annotation, in-game sort of storytelling, and little sort of mini games that help you learn by doing in the ancient world. I think that I just thought that was worthwhile just touching on.
I think so. I mean, I think we have to say that the trails and material that's been released from Assassin's Creed Origins, it looks remarkable.
Mm.
The world that the programmers have researched and developed and created for the game environment. Um, that series has always prided itself on creating a really strong sense of place.
Hmm.
I think it's really interesting now that they're taking that beyond just the gameplay. Yes, you can argue it's great publicity to get people to go and buy be aware of the game and to go and buy it.
It's
But
educational, mommy.
it is
Buy it.
that's what you thing is you that's the thing people forget. Education, particularly these days, isn't a pure thing.
No.
It's a very commercial thing. Um, and if you've got a games developer with that amount of money to spare and they want to spend some of it on making the ancient world come to life for people, particularly young people in schools, I'm not gonna say they shouldn't.
No, not at all.
Um,
There's a wonderful screen capture here from presumably a version of of this software that's going to be released, and it's evisceration. Mummy Station 4 of 40. So your character has just come up to this priest who's about to put a stick up or a dead person's nose, obviously.
yeah.
It says here, first the brain was extracted by inserting a spoon through the nostril to break the ethmoid bone. Ugh.
Yes.
Then, using a spatula, pieces of the brain were removed as thoroughly as possible. What matter remained was extracted after a process of liquefaction achieved through the use of a combination of chemicals. Um, it's the sort of stuff that I always used to enjoy reading about in books
Yeah.
when I was a kid, but now actually being able to go through the room where they're doing this and see it happening stage by stage, it that must be so much fun.
Yeah.
And
Bit
also
messy,
introducing,
but
yeah, exactly, messy, but also introducing words like evisceration into the classroom. I mean,
absolutely. No, I know. It's no, I think again, taking the long view. One of the things that got me hooked on history, and particularly the prehistory of and the Roman period in Britain, were drawings by an artist called Alan Sorrell,
hmm
who did fabulous reconstruction drawings for magazines like the Illustrated London News and for the old Department of Works and so on. So you go to a castle, whatever, and you have an Alan Sorrell postcard, a
hmm
reconstruction of what that castle looked like in the medieval period. You know, wonderful, wonderful. Uh, but his work was inherently dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't just do a flat reconstruction image. He populated it with people doing things. The sky. He did brilliant skies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The skies were always set off the foreground in a really exciting, vivid 3D way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so in that sense, all we've got is a technological version of the same idea. It's about, and we were talking about reenactment earlier, living history. It's about giving an impression of that world, bringing it to life for people who are, as you say, mummies are people for the last 200 years, people have been hooked on mummies, and they're going to be,
Hooked on mummies.
yeah. Well,
Sorry.
yeah. All we need is for that particular reconstruction to finish up with a tasting of mummy liquor in the 19th century. It's in
Yeah.
fact for the full experience, you could go and get the Thai mummy liquor concentrate down at Sainsbury's. Other supermarkets are available.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and now we're back to textures in history. Absolutely. Well, actually, speaking of which, just in terms of, it's funny you were talking about reconstructions done by artists, and some of my favourite reconstructions, and it's no surprise growing up in and around these monuments in North Wales, were actually done for the Cadw visitor books for example, especially Conwy Castle, Rhuddlan Castle as well. So there were some incredible paintings. I'm trying to find the artist's name. I'm afraid I can't find it just now. Which again, they just bring something to life, and as you say, the next step is to turn that into a 3D model, to turn it into actually, and beyond that, a navigable model with annotations and with sounds and with someone poking a hook up someone's nose. So yeah, I'm all for it. I just thought I'd just highlight this initiative. Apparently, it's going to be coming out. The date hasn't actually been announced yet, but it's just early 2018. So.
Well, look forward to that. I mean, can I just make one other very quick point on this actually before we leave this particular segment,
Mm-hmm.
and that is, I think, there's been a lot of controversy recently about publication and about where things are published and how things are published, and questions about whether traditional publication reporting is actually even sustainable
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
future because of the way people, because the way, you know, we're, it is arguable, certainly, that in terms of technologies, the way we can record and discuss the world around us
Mm-hmm.
is being changed by technology, and digital technologies, in the way that the distribution of books was changed and democratized by the introduction of printing in the late 15th century.
Mm-hmm.
It, you
Mm-hmm.
know, the the possibilities for publication and exploration are becoming more and more diverse, and the question is, does archaeological publication need to start to recognize that, and that, for example, in future years, a two-dimensional section drawing is replaced by a three-dimensional navigable projection of your trench section
Mm-hmm.
on your, you know,
Well, and actually, I mean, we are entering that at the moment. I mean, if you go on to websites like Sketchfab and the like, there are archaeologists and also, in particular, individuals attached to archaeological projects who are constructing 3D models of wonderful resolution,
Yeah.
pretty much in their spare time actually. Because often
Yeah.
projects at the moment they don't quite know what to do with those models. So
Yeah.
there could be a wonderful model, for example, of of a wedding ring or something,
Yeah.
and they're not quite sure how to incorporate that into their broader publication or dissemination of information. So it's almost as though at the moment we're starting to see a little backup of those sorts of resources. But as you say, the next step is to take that 3D model and bring it into a way which is a form of publication, a form of, well, actually the equivalent of the sort of thing that I do in video in terms of a site visit.
Yeah.
But if you could actually have a situation where you're essentially visiting an artifact or a site or an excavation in a slice of time,
Yeah.
where maybe you can even actually have some form of interaction with, perhaps there's an archaeologist there who's your tour guide, as it were.
Yeah.
Then that could change the way not only that how these sites are presented to the public, but also actually how we talk about archaeology to each other within the realm of archaeologists. If you could say, well, actually, just pop on your visor, pop over, and you can have a look at the site as it
Yeah.
was yesterday. It's that's going to be a big deal, yeah, definitely.
I,
And in that sense, it is a new Gutenberg moment, because it's also a relatively democratized format. This isn't, you don't have, in fact, it's less exclusive than writing,
yeah.
because you don't have to be able
It's
to read
visual.
even.
No.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
Uh,
it's
uh,
visual novel.
Anyway, that esoteric path has been blocked off for now. Let's just come back onto the main road.
Yeah.
What's your media pick for the month?
My media pick for the month is Gunpowder. It's a three-part dramatisation of the Gunpowder plot, which is currently being broadcast by the BBC and is available on BBC iPlayer for people who have access to iPlayer. It has been co-produced by Kit Harington, who people will know as Jon Snow from Game of Thrones, who plays Robert Catesby, who was actually the real instigator and mind behind the Gunpowder plot. It wasn't Guy Fawkes. Guy Fawkes was the hired help.
Hmm.
Catesby was the person. He was an aristocratic English Catholic gentleman who set up the whole thing and recruited the plotters and almost succeeded in decapitating the British government through the assassination of James I and his senior ministers and the royal family in 1605.
Hmm.
Interestingly, Harrington is actually a direct descendant of Catesby.
Oh,
Um, yeah,
oh,
I think on his mother's side, if I remember rightly from the publicity. So but what is interesting about it is, well, then I think there are a number of things that are interesting about it, and it's also created a bit of a furore
hmm,
in the Daily Mail and others because the first episode that went out on Saturday is extremely violent in parts. About half an hour in, you have a middle-aged woman who is pressed to death under an iron door, and a young novitiate Catholic priest who's hung, drawn, and quartered. And not in full view. It's there's a lot of cutaways and implied violence, but it was a very grim watch. Now that's been controversial because I don't I didn't watch Strictly Come Dancing and then sit down to watch Kit Harington to be made to feel sick by the whatever. Um,
maybe you should back off the northern accent. Just,
okay, sorry.
just,
Other
it's not
other accents are to imply no. It was the reception has been mixed.
good.
Now, I take the view that actually what they've tried to do, I think, really importantly in the current climate, is to show why people turn to political violence.
Yes,
How
yeah.
political extremism comes about, particularly when there's a religious element. It doesn't take much to make the leap to for example, jihadi fundamentalism or Christian fundamentalists who want to shoot doctors who work in abortion clinics.
Yeah, well, and actually, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm pro-life, so I'm going to kill you. No,
Exactly.
no, but actually, it's funny because in that sense, the first thing I thought when I saw an advert for this on TV was how uh, brave, I guess, to tell this story at a time when Parliament is under attack. You know,
Yeah.
it's been attacked a couple of times past few months. It is quite a brave move to make, and also in that sense, I guess yes, okay, there's this idea of religious fundamentalism being linked to extremism,
Mm.
but then again, I think there are many. I mean, a comedian I was once went to see was joking, but also making a serious point about how actually uh, anyone can be turned into an extremist in the right circumstances. You
Yeah.
know, in that moment when you're cut up on the motorway by some, you
Yeah.
know, gimp in a great big 4x4 Porsche who has no idea how to drive such a wonderful car, you are in that moment an extremist, you know, and you
Yeah.
would do almost anything to enact your justice upon them. It's but also in a more serious way. I mean, the same could, thankfully we never had to see it here, but if, for example, there had been an occupying force going back to Muppets of the Month and the idea of alternate Nazi histories, if the Second World War had gone a different way, we would have seen nationalists uh, possibly painted as extremists by the press, trying to flush out an occupying force from this country. This is actually something that does and can happen. Now, at the same time, of course, there is no excuse for any of it, and I'm not remotely trying to say, oh, it's fine. I'm not taking the side of people who kill people on bridges in London
No.
whatsoever.
No.
But this is an interesting exploration of actually well, actually, well, of the mentality and of the reasoning, but also actually, it's a really interesting reminder that at the heart of celebrations in this country at this time of year, one of the few really civic holidays that we have,
Mm.
as opposed to the holidays linked with saints' days, for example, in Britain, or bank holidays,
Mm.
is around the attempted destruction of Parliament by
Yes.
religious fundamentalists, and it's all about it's actually because Bonfire Night was the history. It's interesting. Bonfire Night was specifically encouraged by Parliament and government following these events as
Absolutely.
an alternative to Samhain, or to Halloween.
Yeah.
They said, "We'll
Yeah.
take those bonfires that you light on Halloween. We'll light them on November the 5th, and we will remember, that God and King and countries prevailed." It's I think it's a really interesting reminder of why we do that. Because actually, growing up, I didn't know. I just all I knew was that some guy called Guy Fawkes didn't blow up Parliament, and that was it. And then that's why we have fireworks. So it is. I think it's a really interesting, potent
Yeah,
reminder.
I think it's brave, and it's an uncomfortable watch on two levels. I think, and deliberately so. What one is the physical aspects of it. The pain and the death that's inflicted on some of the characters
Hmm.
um, reminds us what a violent place certainly the judicial system was in Tudor and Jacobean England.
Yeah, and famously, it's the signature, isn't it? People often point to Guy Fawkes'
Yes.
signature
Yeah,
before and after torture. So it starts
absolutely.
out, you can read it, and then when he's finished, clearly they've
Yeah.
broken his arm or something. There is
Uh,
that.
yeah.
But just tell me one thing: Liv Tyler doesn't get squished, does she?
Uh, well, put it this way: the character she plays lived into the 1630s. So,
That's a
um,
relief.
no, I should mention it has a terrific cast actually as well. And Liv Tyler as one of Catesby's relatives. Mark Gatiss is terrific as Cecil, the King's spy master.
Okay,
And
yeah.
I think what one of the things it does, which again sets up a very uncomfortable modern echo, is look at the politics of this,
Mm,
the idea that you have a religious uh, a group of people who've maintained their religion against the wishes of the state,
mm, mm,
um, and because of the way the state has treated them the violence the state has inflicted on them feel justified in returning that with violence.
Hmm. Well, and
Um,
also in that sense, those people being uh, British citizens, being English, being
absolutely,
Scottish, being Irish, then,
absolutely, and
mm,
so they're the enemy within. you know,
yeah,
it's where we begin to get that kind of narrative being built up. And you talked about the fact that the government did encourage uh, the the celebration of the failure of the Gunpowder Plot
mm,
in 1605 in subsequent years.
mm,
It became that secular holiday you described, and
mm,
so as I say, I think it's particularly timely at the moment for that reason. It also, I think, it's a really useful antidote to what I would call, and other people have called, the Downtonization of history on television.
mm, mm,
We see a lot of you know very good and wonderful, and I love the Andrew Davis Pride and Prejudice adaptation in the mid 90s, which
mm,
sort of set in train that whole or rebooted that whole sort of genre. I have to say, Downton Abbey never did it for me, but it's we've currently got Victoria on ITV. The Crown on Netflix is a little bit more meaty in terms of the issues it covers and the way it's covered, but it's dealing with the aristos in a sort of a sort of aristocratic soap opera sort of way. What this is doing, it's a very political piece. And the other thing I should say, it's written by Ronan Bennett, and who is a Northern Irish writer. But in his early life, he was tried and then acquitted of implication in a number of terrorist-related crimes.
right.
Um, and say that was a long time ago now, but his work has been informed by that experience and the experience of politics in Northern Ireland.
Mm, mm,
Um, so it's a very visceral, I think useful exploration of the issues around political violence, how it comes about, how people justify it to
mm,
themselves.
mm. But
Um,
nonetheless, probably not a good idea in the classroom to go from Assassin's Creed Origins software that we were just talking about to this.
Uh, this is certainly a 15 certificate, if not an 18, in terms of some of the scenes. But all credit to the BBC for producing it. I think it's a very necessary antidote to perhaps 300 years of sanitizing something that was pretty violent and pretty ugly.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, thank you very much for that. And indeed, this brings us to a close for October. Thank you for your time. Now, of course, those of you at home, please do feel free to comment, to send emails in if you have news stories, perhaps, that you want us to look at in November. And as ever, as we do, in fact, continue to be, just have a good conversation. We enjoy reading them, and where possible, adding to this conversation. So Andy and I will be checking in. Thank you for your time this month, Andy, and well, we'll see you next month.
Thanks, Mark. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye bye.